Michael, tell us what led you to start Blackboard in the first place? I mean, you were just a college kid at the time.
So, hi everyone, Michael Chasen. I had been interested in technology and education for a while. I had gotten my undergraduate degree in computer science from American University. I went on and got my MBA from Georgetown, and then ended up working at a large education consulting firm at KPMG Pete Marwick. And as I said in the video, we were working with these schools, a lot of colleges and universities, doing enterprise software installations. And I saw that they were spending millions of dollars. They were starting to wire up the dorm rooms, and many of the schools were even wiring up the classrooms to the internet. So this is back in 1996, 1997. The internet was just starting to roll out across campuses, and obviously before wireless. And there wasn't any software that then allowed the schools and empower the teachers to start bringing that education online. So even though they were connecting the whole campus, they weren't using it in a way to make their teaching and learning more effective. So, my friend and I just said, hey, this is a great opportunity. We should start designing software that would let schools bring their teaching and learning online.
When I interviewed you in Vegas, though, you mentioned that at the time, no one could see the future of what the internet would do to education. That you just identified an issue, a problem, as many people in this room are probably doing, working on their startups. They have a problem they focus on. You're like, where's the software, right? What do you think now, looking at the education, the explosion of educational startups, where do you think the opportunity is? Because I'm surprised, because you left Blackboard, and I mean, after a huge successful run, I think you brought it up to 3,000 employees, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, just sold it for $1.7 billion we were talking about. I'm surprised you're not starting another educational startup given the space.
So a lot of good points there, but let me actually just go to comment on the very first thing that you said. It's funny, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room can relate, having a vision about where the opportunity is in the future. When we went around and started talking to potential investors about investing in Blackboard, our very first venture capital investor, Novak Biddle, of course, did a market check and called a number of schools, some top institutions, some mid-level institutions, to ask if they'd ever use software to put their courses online, and they all said no. And that was the reference calls for us, and they came back to us. They said, look, we asked all the schools if they would use the internet to teach and learn, and they all said no. They were classroom-based products that they were delivering.
Talk about Mr. Gleason.
Yeah, well, that was basically how we ended up still convinced our very first investor to come into the company, because we said, look, this is where we believe that the industry is going. This is where it's going in the future. And it's interesting because even the way that we entered the schools back in the beginning was we wouldn't be speaking to the presidents of the schools or the CIOs. Often we were dealing with maybe a teacher in a particular department. We were just trying to get in the door at the school. And when we'd have teachers that were just interested in this technology, so sometimes we'd sell it to just a department. And then what would happen over time is I remember we had this one case where years later a school called us up because they said, oh my goodness, we're having problems in the software, the system's down, and we said, okay, well, we want to get a handle on this. How many courses do you have online? They said, we have hundreds of courses online. And we said, okay, well, how much of your content is online? They said, all the courses have all their course material online, and we even put our midterms and our files up online. We said, okay, well, what's the hosting infrastructure, or how are you running this? And they said, well, we're running it in one of our professor's servers under his desk. And we said, you're running your entire school education program on a server under one of your teacher's desks. And they said, well, that's how it started. There was a professor in the computer science department who bought your software, and it eventually started being used by the whole school, but we haven't really upgraded the infrastructure. And I think that's just a perfect example of how even the schools themselves weren't necessarily prepared for this disruption that we then saw taking place in education over the last decade, and really incorporating technology, and in particular the internet, into and being integrated in the way people deliver the classroom experience.
And you had, as is the case often today, somebody like Robert Scoble, you had these early adopters. You had these teachers who said, I get it. and it would just be, all you needed was one, right?
Yeah.
So you just went around.
Yeah.
This is how you spread it. You went around school by school. You had luck at Yale Medical School, right? Well, you had a few that picked it up.
That was
on their
always the way
laptop.
we started in the beginning. We had a handful of teachers at Cornell University, University of Pittsburgh, Yale Medical School. Some were just individual teachers, some were leading a department, and that's how we entered the schools. Now today, Blackboard primarily sells our software to the presidents and the CIOs of institutions because they're making these university-wide technology decisions. But going in the door in the first place, no one was prepared or even thinking about it.
Where do you think, back to that question that had three parts to it, the third part was, where do you think we're headed? And there's a lot of pushback on the accreditation issue. And when that breaks, do you think I'm right that the dam's just going to break? I mean, it's just going to flood.
Yeah.
What are they going to do now? 99% of the schools are not the Ivies. I mean, I don't think those are going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But the community colleges and all of this, there's waiting lists, at least in America. There's you can't even get into certain basic classes for 2 years. So I think the brick and mortar maybe. What do you think?
Well, I think that's a little drastic, but I am now seeing in the education market space a level of disruption that we haven't seen in over a decade. The first disruption, just utilizing the internet and starting to put courses online, allowed Blackboard to start and flourish as a company. But what we're seeing today is another massive disruption. You really have two factors that are coming to play. One is, if you've heard about this trend that's taking place in education now with what's called MOOCs, massively open online courses. We have managed to refine the technology and the process enough where we can have one class run by a teacher or a couple teachers and a handful of TAs teach what are hundreds or thousands of students. Mm-hmm. Now, at the same time, we've now gotten content to be both interactive and useful that can be distributed on mobile devices, whether that's your cell phones or your tablets. And where that comes into play is, I tell the story. I was visiting a university in China when I was at Blackboard, and I was meeting with the president of the school, and he said to me that they were building so many buildings because they had this mass population they were trying to get through their higher education system. But he said, we literally cannot build enough buildings to put people through our college. And even if we could, we have a problem because there are people that live 7 hours outside the city that just can't get to it. Well, now, if you think about it, you have this online environment where people can, hundreds or thousands of people can attend a course, thus dropping the cost of delivering a course tremendously. And at the same time, you can actually now deliver that course over mobile devices, i.e., they don't need to be in the classroom and they can be 7 hours outside the city. When you combine those two factors, I think that you're going to see tremendous pricing pressure in higher education. That's going to open up the education system to thousands or millions of people that today can't afford to bring their education level up to higher ed or beyond, and that's going to be disruptive to the whole system.
And the fear factor is with faculty thinking, well, if you can take a course from, this Yale professor, why would you take my same course? And but meanwhile, when they've worked on a textbook, and digital textbooks are going to be replacing these $600, $700 spends for a student annually, they get paid possibly more for their digital textbook, even though it's 8 cents version or something. They got ripped off by the publishers in the first place. So, but there's a lot of fear, I think, among faculty.
I don't know if the fear is among faculty as much as it is among the publishers. So certainly
that too,
the
and the
textbook
institutions.
industries. Yeah. I think the teachers, look, some of the older school professors might be more concerned, but I personally know that there are a lot of young, energetic teachers that look forward to, wow, here's an opportunity. I can not just teach a class of 20, but I might be able to utilize my online experience and reach hundreds or thousands of people. So I think to some teachers it's a positive.
But the Rev model, I think, is still up in the air.
Yeah.
And I think I know that the presidents of a lot of these community colleges are pushing back, and lobbying, and the teachers union, I think, is not on board yet. But with Blackboard, you had this situation where you had a lot of pressure on you to change your revenue model early on, to go more advertising, right, and less subscription-based. And you held firm to charging for that software. So, I would elect you to figure out this revenue model situation.
Yeah, it was interesting. So even, back in what I would call kind of the first internet boom when we brought Blackboard to market early on, so in 1998, 99, 2000, we were also still trying to figure out a revenue model. We believed we were building software that had a value to it. And we decided to charge an annual subscription fee for the software. It was very cheap for a school. We were charging $5,000 a year annual subscription fee. And the idea was we would then create add-on technologies so the school can continue to expand or grow or have an enterprise version, and then upsell them maybe a $25,000 annual subscription. Or schools today at Blackboard pay an average of just over $50,000 a year now from that original $5,000 number when we started. So we've continued to enhance the product and increase the annual subscription. But the interesting thing was we actually had pressure a little bit from the tech industry and some of the early investment banks we were speaking to that said, change your model. Don't charge for the software. What you should do is put advertising in the software and offer it free to the schools. And it was a more difficult proposition for education that doesn't necessarily like to have kind of advertising within the classroom. And also at the time, we couldn't figure out how that would really make us money. We kind of stayed the course with saying, look, we'll charge to the school because we think there's value here. And if they want to do advertising, we'll let them handle that. And we created a successful enterprise software company.
And now you've hung up your hat, you're leaving Blackboard, you've left Blackboard,
yeah.
And you started an ambient sort of location platform that you say is going to, everyone was sort of thinking, okay, this location stuff is kind of, that trend is ending, right? Or it just didn't, there's Highlight and there's a few others that some people use, but it wasn't really happening. And then you come along just this spring, minutes ago, and you raise over $12 million in your Series A, which you just announced, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And you're going to blow them all out of the water. How are you going to do that?
Well,
SocialRadar.
And
one more thing.
Yeah,
the kids, the college kids. The fact that that you are so in touch with the college kids through Blackboard, I imagine, is some link to this, yes?
Yeah. So, look, one of the great things about being at Blackboard is we got to spend a lot of time on college campuses. Even though we were an enterprise software company, we were designing software for the faculty and the students. So we got to work hand in hand with a lot of students, making sure that our software fit the way that they were teaching and learning and the changes that were taking place on campus. We started moving a lot of our technology to mobile to allow students to access their materials in the palm of their hand. And I saw a big trend that was taking place on college campuses. We saw that while just over 60% of America has smartphones, we were seeing that over 90% of some college campuses, everyone had smartphone technology. We saw that while 56% of America has a user profile up online, on some college campuses, over 95% of the student body had Facebook profiles or other information online. And we saw that these same students were openly sharing their social information and in many cases, their location information freely. They would use the Apple Find My Friends and just let their friends know where they were all the time and didn't actually have this higher level of concern around privacy. And just the millennials in general were a lot more open about sharing their information and utilizing these tools that they had on them. And that kind of intersected with a particular interest of mine. I think always found it strange that I come to a conference like this, or I go to a restaurant, or I walk into a room, or I visit another city, and even though everybody has a smartphone in their pocket, which can act as a location beacon, and everybody has a user profile up online, when you walk into a room, no one's connected those things to let you know who in the area that you're connected to and what your relationship is with them. And there are a couple of applications, and I'm a fan of all of them, and I use all of them, that utilize location and social information in different ways, but none that let you really just walk into a room, look down at your hands, and you know that, hey, there's 20 people here at this conference that I know, 5 coworkers of mine, 3 people that I went to college with, a guy I played tennis with last week, 4 friends of friends, and here's how I'm connected to everybody. So started designing a product that, first of all, mined all of the existing social networks, of Facebook, Foursquare, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google, anything where you could share location information, to gather all that information together, as well as utilize its own proprietary network to put it together. So you could say, tell me who's in this room with me, tell me who's within 500 feet, who's within a mile. And that was the idea behind SocialRadar.
Mm-hmm. And I was interviewing Scoble in Silicon Valley, and he said, this is the age of context, which we talked about briefly. That's what SocialRadar brings, right? It brings context. Google Glasses. What else are we seeing come out, and who are your brethren? Who are the most disruptive companies in terms of taking advantage of this opportunity now that so many of us are logged in through Facebook or logged in through Twitter? There is this opportunity, right?
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to speak with Scoble just 2 weeks ago. We were at a startup conference in San Francisco together, and I was actually showing him SocialRadar and talking about we're not only developing it for the iPhone but for Google Glass, and we're talking about how that type of technology, wearable, really not that obtrusive technology, is the perfect forum for this idea of contextual information that you were talking about. The idea that, forget walking into a room and having to look down at your hand to see who's there. Walk into a room and automatically be alerted that there's someone there that you know and how you're connected to them. So I believe that Google Glass is the perfect form factor for this type of technology. We're obviously still early in the adoption cycle, but I think you're going to see a lot more of this contextual type of technology coming out there that just enhances your everyday experience and really is non-obtrusive to the way that you interface, walk around, or talk with other people.
So now what are next steps for you? Because I also read that you were building furniture, which is something that you told me about back with Blackboard. You had so many people crammed into this one apartment that you had a desk that you had to lift it up to go to lunch.
Yeah,
you all had to go to lunch at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you're expanding again.
It's great to be back and doing a startup again. As you said, I started Blackboard with a friend of mine from college. Started 2 of us. And we had the opportunity to grow the company to 3,000 people, 20 offices around the world. But I remember back in the story that I was telling was that when we started, I was in a brownstone, literally maybe twice the size of this platform we're sitting on. It was very small. And when it was 2 of us, it was fine. And we eventually got to 12 people. And we were so crammed, we literally had to have a desk standing up, blocking the exit door. And when we were all inside, we'd put the desk down. So we had to have coordinated time to leave to go to lunch and even to leave to go to the bathroom. So that's how crammed into the startup space we were. Now as we got bigger, we moved into other space, and it's now so interesting to go back to being a startup. So we actually technically started the company probably about 2 months ago, and 3 weeks ago or so we got office furniture. So instead of sitting on folding chairs and the $50 plastic tables from Staples, we got people desks and actual chairs, and they showed up. And I guess I'd kind of forgotten. At Blackboard, we had gotten so big, we actually literally had a group that just built furniture and installed it. That's the size of our organization. So I had forgotten that these things don't come assembled. So all these desks showed up at our office and chairs, and I'm like, who's going to put these together? And then I realized the answer was me, plus the interns, because we didn't want to actually interrupt any of the developers who were doing actually all of the important work in programming. And you forget those things, but I think that those are the powerful memories you have, and the key moments when you're building your company. You're literally building your company.
Yeah, and your advice to this room in terms of what does it take, because it's different now, right? From when you started, 1999. So much more expensive to start a company then. So
Yeah.
we have the lower cost. We need less people, right? What stayed the same? What are the challenges that you're facing now as a startup entrepreneur again? And what should these guys do?
Yeah, the benefits of starting a company today are tremendous. And that's why I think you're seeing a surge again in entrepreneurism and in certain areas like mobile or data storage or wearable devices. When we started Blackboard, we had to install our own phone PBX, install a server to run our mail system. We had to buy $2 million of hardware just to get a couple of first clients up online. Today, one internet connection in the office is wireless. You have a wireless VoIP. We've outsourced our entire data infrastructure to Amazon. All of those barriers that used to be higher barriers for a startup company are down. But the one thing that remains the same, which I think is the most important thing about a startup that I also love talking about, is it still takes all of your time, and therefore you need to make sure you're doing something you're passionate about. When I started Blackboard, it was because I was passionate about education. I wanted to do something to make a difference. What I'm doing now with SocialRadar is because I believe that this type of information and knowledge is going to fundamentally change the way people interact. And I talk with a lot of people that are just starting companies, and they ask me, what's the most important thing? I say, look, if you're doing a startup, it is something that takes more than all of your time. And even now, even though I've been successful with my my first startup, and I'm on my second, I still spend all of my time doing work. I wake up first thing in the morning, I'm sending emails, I'm in the shower thinking about my day. On the way to work, I'm on the phone. I work all morning. I have a lunch meeting. I work all afternoon. Sometimes I make it home for dinner, but after dinner I'm at my computer till midnight or later working, and it's because I'm passionate about what I do. I probably actually have a problem now that I'm saying this out loud and thinking about it. And I say that, therefore, if you're gonna start your own company, make sure it is something that you care about and that you're passionate about. Make sure that you believe that you are making a difference and that you are doing something important, because it's not a part-time job. It is not a full-time job. It is a lifestyle commitment, and it doesn't take a year or two. It took 15 years to build Blackboard to reach the global success that we one day knew and thought it could be. And it is not a short run. So just make sure you're doing something that you love, and that's the most important thing. And that was true then. That was true back then, and it's true now.
It's an absolute privilege to be in our position, all of us in this room, to have made a decision to go ahead and pursue our passion and what we love, or what we really feel like could change the world. And I think it's never losing sight of that. I mean, as a filmmaker, I never, I never can quit. It's tenacity. It's believing even when people say your idea is not really good. If you know that there's some part of it, be ready to iterate, be ready to pivot. If you need to, lose some of the dead weight, lose that thing that's lurking in the back of your head that's like, well, but that was the original idea. Lose that, but hold the core of what it is that's that fire. I think that the reason I started a Total Disruption in the first place is because I related so much to being a startup entrepreneur as a filmmaker. You just have to be passionate at the core. And your wife, this is what I want to end on, is I want you to tell everybody the story of your marriage, and what you did, tell them the story of your marriage.
Sure.
No.
Well, it's also a
it's an
15-year
amazing
journey.
it's an amazing story.
The story that I tell is, as I said, when I got out of school, I was working at KPMG Pete Marwick, and I had worked there for just about a year, and my partner and I decided, Matt Patinsky, my friend from college, who we were going to start the company together, decided to quit. And actually, I was like just a week shy of working there for 1 year, and I'm like, I'm not quitting yet. I'm going to wait a week because I definitely have to have on my resume that I've worked somewhere for like 1 year. So I literally hung around a week, then quit like a year and 2 days after my anniversary of working there. And so also, though, I quit just as I was about to get married. So if you can imagine, the conversation kind of went like this. I said, oh, honey, you know that high-paying job I have in consulting? You know my old college roommate who you didn't like that much? Here's an idea. So there was a little bit of crying, but I stopped crying because she said she'd still go through with the wedding. So that was actually fine.
He was crying.
Yeah,
that's the important thing. Wasn't it like the week of? It was like the week of your wedding.
Yeah, it was literally like 2 weeks before getting married. Nonetheless, she's been incredibly supportive, both of my first venture and now, and I always think it's funny because even the basis of our getting married was, I think, her realizing the kind of life that she was stepping into, marrying an entrepreneur and all the quirks and workaholic tendencies that come with it. So I wanted to make sure we started things off right by being unemployed right before I got married. I think that's at the right level. Yes. Set expectations going forward.
Thank you so much for coming and joining us today here. Thanks for accepting the invite.
I love coming to startup conferences and meetups, not just because I did a startup with Blackboard that turned into a successful company, but I love it so much I'm doing it again. I also love connecting with other entrepreneurs. I'm going to be here the whole conference. I'll be around. I love connecting, talking about your ideas. I mean, obviously I have a specific passion about education and about the social, local, mobile space. But in general, I love talking to other entrepreneurs and startups. So come grab me if I could be helpful. Also, we'll be launching our beta soon for SocialRadar. So please go to socialradar.com. Just drop me an email. Make sure everybody here gets an invite to the beta program. Would love your early feedback. We'll be out in a couple of weeks. And would love to just get connected with as many people here as I can. So thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah.
Good. And thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you to Phil Tellio and Rebecca and Alistair Cole. It's been a pleasure being at this really innovative festival for 3 years running now. And if you have a startup that you think is right, once you go to totaldisruption.com, that should be covered by us, let me know. Thanks.
Good. Okay, thank you very much. Great job.